Hmm. Okay, everyone. So I it's 2:25 in the morning, and I just made it back in from watching a 10:30 p.m. showing of Oppenheimer. And actually, I want to uh buy the book that this is based on because I have not read the book. So I think that the book would be, you know, a good, nice little read. Um, yeah, so I'm looking it up now to purchase. That being said, let's move on to a chat about it. Um, First off, there's a lot of criticisms, and that's very delightful. Anyway, there's a lot of criticisms about this film, and one of the major criticisms that has come up is the fact that there is a lack of Jews, no, a lack of Japanese in the film, and they do not center the film enough on at least having the Japanese experience be an indicator of, like, at least have them represent themselves as a space for the harms that came from this atom bomb. Um, I embrace the criticism here, but but I don't think that it would have been accurate to the experience. So I think that it's important to, when you do period pieces like this, it can be very, very difficult to do it without offending and without realizing that at the time it was a problem. There was a problem. And I think that hmm, I think that America as a whole, when it comes to its education system, we do not do enough in giving a very good, holistic depiction of context and accuracy. So we really teach based on, especially when it comes to World War II, a geopolitical stance. And World War II, the ending of World War II, you had Germany that was forced into the position to accept that they were the biggest of the bad in this space. And they caused a great deal of harm to a people and to Europe. And so, because pretty much all of Europe, some parts of Africa, were involved in this conflict, you had, you have the European understanding of what World War II is and how we are taught World War II is evaluating the big bad being Germany and Italy, of course. And I don't even think that Italy gets enough coverage when it comes to how bad. Side note, about 8 years ago, uh, the the granddaughter of Mussolini decided to go on Twitter and talk about how good of a man her grandfather was. She was ran off of Twitter instantly. Um, and I'm like, yeah, man, two things could be true. He could have been a very good man to you, but nobody in the entire world is trying to hear that story. Anyway, but like I said, and I think part of that is we really do need, and I appreciate film, and I know that even Dr. Greg Carr, makes an assertion like, unfortunately, there's a layman, and he's more than one person who laments about how Americans get a lot of their information about individuals in history and time periods based off of film and documentaries instead of like reading. And I think that, and I've argued that film, docuseries, documentaries, etc., is an entry point to get people into trying to want to know more. And instead of lamenting, I think that that also gives Hollywood and other filmmakers and documentary makers, anything that's putting anything out in the world, all of us a responsibility to be as accurate. And the cool thing about history and as historians is that we really do need to, history can always be corrected by knowing more information. And the thing is too, is that as me in the year is 2023, we can always go back and look at things in hindsight and say, okay, yo, you guys shouldn't have done that. And then part of it is there are many instances where we can say in real time, they shouldn't have done that. But then there's other instances where it's like, well, they had a limited amount of information. And there are a lot of truths that are true. I do appreciate that this film demonstrates how much of a jerk Truman was. I mean, I when I teach American politics, I don't give a nice, I don't really give much of a good comprehensive understanding of Truman. Because Truman one of the things of Roosevelt that we look at all the glorification of Roosevelt and figuring out like not about doing a good critical analysis of he also too had some faults, and some of his faults were, well, he had some racist components to him. But the difference, and so did Truman, the difference between Roosevelt and Truman is Eleanor. I mean, let's keep it, keeping it a buck, Eleanor is the difference between the two. Eleanor kept kept Roosevelt in check in the sense of being, she's the one who pushed him to become more inclusive. And, she's the one who was trying to get Roosevelt to start bringing in Jews way before the Holocaust, when rumors of the Holocaust was taking place. Right. I mean, she was really the one that, saw a problem, saw a need, and was really trying and to push him to become more inclusive with his policies. Harry didn't have it, Eleanor. And so you do have some problematic spaces with Truman for sure. I mean, and I think that what this movie demonstrates the most, which is something that a lot of people are going to have a lot of hesitation about, is one of the best things about this film. And first of all, let me say that this film is excellent. It deserves, I mean, this is the one reason why I think I've seen all of Christopher Nolan's movies. Like, he is so unbelievably good. Now, granted, Tenet was bad, but he overall is so unbelievably such a genius when it comes to filmmaking and storytelling. And one of the things that I will say that, number one, it's loud. It's a very loud movie. And like from as soon as you go in, it's loud. And so when it's quiet, you're like, it becomes stunning that it's quiet. And there are moments that I even had to take some deep breaths to try to focus myself, because the background can become so loud that it's hard to hear the words. And it's just loud and it's vibrating. And I saw it in Dolby. And so like it's it's the energy is flowing through you. And clearly that is what Christopher Nolan's trying to get us to realize. Like, this is that the atomic bomb, nuclear energy is loud, disruptive, physically and politically. Like, it's just emanating, like every, so it makes the story move, even though it may seem to be a drama. It is, but it's moving constantly. And I thought that was a very um eloquent way to get people in and never let them go until the end. I Back to history. I've always wondered, because the timeline doesn't work. For all the movies that we learn, that we have watched, the timeline is that we see a lot of movies on the Eastern Front, and so it makes people assume that America was involved in the war from the onslaught. And that was simply not the case. America was involved in the war at the very end. And not because, and what is the misconception is that America was a completely on the side against Hitler. And that was not the case. So there's a lot of misconceptions that have taken place because Hollywood has really reshaped and reframed history. America had many opportunities to get involved in World War II, and Congress refused to move forward. And Rachel Maddow does an excellent job at a a podcast to explain this. And there's a lot of people who have been trying to give a more holistic approach, but I mean, you really do need to go back and change some textbooks. I mean, Lord of the Rings is literally about why America kind of slowly got involved in the war, even after many, many attempts of trying to get America to be involved. Now, America was always involved in the Pacific, right? And so, what I've always found fascinating is that the way that history is taught is that the Pacific was a war we were involved in, and that it was quick. It wasn't. It wasn't a quick war, and that the atomic bomb was dropped very quickly to kind of negate what was taking place, and that's not accurate either. Um, I think that there's a lot of inaccuracies, and I think that they do a very good job at trying to be like, look, this bomb was originally being developed in private to drop on Germany. And then there's some deeper questions like, was Russia our friend? Um, and if so, should we be sharing with Russia our info? And that becomes, like the geopolitical debate internally. And it leads to part of the issues with America's academy is that we are pretty open in sharing information, and the academy across the country. And interestingly enough, this topic still comes up because it's a question of how much information do you share with people around the country, around the world, in the sense that how much do you collaborate? What topics do you collaborate with? And there's a really good book called Spy University. Oh, sorry. A really good book called Spy University by Daniel Gordon. And he's really kind of touching upon the bread, the hallmark of Americans, um, colleges and university, is the openness to share. And so this is why it's very easy for people to want to introduce spies into our um, colleges and universities. But then simultaneously, oh gosh, what? Sorry. But simultaneously, this can produce some larger issues, right? And I just think that um, universities and the military have been intertwined with each other for a very long time. And Truman, after this, Truman became a champion of the GI Bill and of radically opening opportunities for research institutions and for all colleges because of this Cold War that grew between the United States and Russia, and knowing that it was a national security threat if America is not caught up in STEM education. And so the importance of educating the next generation became of utmost concern. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. And honestly, World War II has shaped Americans' politics and really the world's politics in so many ways, and it shaped the biggest powers that we're still living under the shadows of World War II, either out of fear, out of political positioning, um, and this leads to the Japanese. And I don't, and because of the relationship we've established with the Japanese, it's pretty evident that when we teach about World War II, we focus so much on the Eastern Front and very little on the Pacific, which in in real life context were internment camps wrong? Absolutely. Like there's um no doubt. And uh we actually had more spies and more infiltration from the Germans and the Russians than we ever did from the Japanese. Oh, not a moth, not a moth. Ugh. Um, so having Japanese internment camps made no sense. Full stop. But we miss out that when the Japan dropped a bomb on Pearl Harbor and bombed Pearl Harbor, we're forgetting what was taking place before Pearl Harbor and what the Japanese was doing in regards to, like, I will tell you, people do not, history books, a lot of history books, a lot of American history books do not get into what was taking place in Asia and how China and Korean were fighting with Japan and how, and the reasoning for Pearl Harbor to be dropped. We're getting it as the reasoning to bomb Pearl Harbor was to tip people off into getting America involved in the war. And when in fact, this made no sense because Germany was part of its entire mission was to find ways to get sympathy for the Germans, Nazi sympathy for the Germans in America in order to prevent them from going into war. He knew, Germans knew that they were not going to get the United States to fight on their behalf and join them. But what they would push is saying that this is not our fight and trying to get them to not join the war. So Pearl Harbor being the thing that would being used, Japanese using that to get them involved in the war made no sense. It was a it was Hawaii was strategically placed. Hawaii was necessary for what the Japanese envisioned for their empire building. So and there's a lot of things that we just aren't as familiar with. So and because of our relation, and because Germany has accepted responsibility, you're getting more films about Germany, but you're not getting enough or hardly any films in understanding this aspect. And so what we are constantly getting is the dropping of the atom bombs being completely immoral, unethical. I'm not going to argue against that. I am going to say that we are in the middle of a war. America had no one to help because the allies were depleted. And You have questions of how long was the war going to last? Could you negotiate? I mean, all signs indicate that there was going to be no negotiating. Was Japan going to win? Probably not. So this was almost like a shortcut to winning. This is such a difficult, it's difficult. And I think that this movie tries to capsulate, and this is exactly the reason why people are complaining about the lack of Japanese and the harms of the atom bombs is the exact point of the movie. People were focused on Germany. Once Germany fell, there is going to be a focus on Japan. You already have people who are in charge who were racist. Keep it 100, keep it 100, right? So they didn't view them as human or equitable. So dropping a bomb on them is not political decision, is not something that they would be opposed to and thinking about the short or long term effects. But what I do think is that, and so, well, and here's another thing about these kind of films, diversity. So when you watch, I struggle with when you make these kind of films and you realize that this was written, the time period that this happened, when you're looking for diversity, you're going to struggle to find it. And people asking for diversity, I don't want somebody who is a real person being substitute for somebody of a different nationality just for the sake of inclusivity. No, this needs to be as accurate as possible. Somebody was made a mention, well, he's a Oppenheimer's a Jew. I Yeah, I have no idea why that was supposed to be a necessary statement to say. Yeah, he's a Jew. Einstein is too. Like, I mean, I'm trying to figure this out. Like, I don't understand the purpose of this, but what I do think it does a very excellent job, especially this was a motivating factor for them being involved, is because they were told that this was going to be focused on Russia, on Germany. I I think you do deal with the ethics of it, but scientists are constantly the people who are first investigators and are trying to figure things out. And they do not give as much regard for individuals and the ramifications of their discovery. And and so it's complicated, right? So like as it's complicated to watch them celebrate a discovery knowing that you cannot put the genie back in the bottle. Complicated. And I think that's what the film is about. Um, so for those who are looking for, okay, and those who are looking for more accountability, I don't think that that's what this is for, because this is not a commentary. This is starting the question, and it presents real-time question conundrums with people were afraid of the Communist Party, which is ridiculous. Um, I mean, but we're still dealing with those kind of issues now where people want to limit different perspectives and target people just speaking out, especially if they are absolutely more credible to speak out. Um, I don't know. I think, and then this is the biggest one for me is the politics of treating people. So it's I mean, it is really, really fascinating how people, things come full circle. Essentially, John F. Kennedy Jr. is the one who blocked Strauss from getting his appointment because of how he felt that he did not appreciate how Strauss treated Oppenheimer because Einstein, I'm not sure if he said it, but it could be that he said it, tossed him, was like, look, dude, everything, you do things, and it's not just him, but it's a number of people who made these comments that you do this for your country, they're going to toss you aside. And you don't want to believe that your country is going to toss you aside. I mean, the dude did something that was significant, and yet he was tossed aside. And it's disheartening to see, but it's the truth. It is utterly the truth. Um, I thought that the acting was well played. I thought it presented all of these really great arguments. It looked at the politics of it, and it is a predominantly white, now granted from different backgrounds, like from different locations, different European countries, but this is a white space making decisions for primarily that have long-term effects. United States imperialistic mindset definitely taken over. I watched it and um and I listened to people talking about white supremacy, and you know what? I get it, but I think I'm more concerned about the mindset that's taking place um, as a whole. People do think that these decisions were overall made by um, belief that U.S. is superior to others, which is even interesting. Even when Oppenheimer was explaining that, look, they have intelligent people that work for them too. They absolutely are going to figure this out. And Julian's like, yeah, no, no, they won't. And it's like it defies logic. Like you cannot be this blind to the truth. Like people, of course, are going to figure out this. And exactly what Oppenheimer predicted is what's happening today. Um, Very good watch. It's a difficult watch. I do think that everyone should watch it. And I know that I've talked way too long about it. But I will say if you do go see it in Dolby, it's loud. There are moments where I was like, man, I should have bought some earphones because it's too loud for me. And there are moments where I did put my hands over my ears because it was too loud. But overall, very good film, very good questions that it leads you to discuss. And yeah, have a very, very good night. Bye.